You must have seen the change in the schedule.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Professor Choudhury, am I audible to you?
Yes, absolutely clearly.
Yes.
Good morning.
Morning. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you. How are you?
Fine, thank you. Thank you. So here we go. Today we have with us Professor Anindya Syam Choudhury. He is a professor of English at Assam University, Silchar. And he has, though his PhD is in English, but he has interest in language. He has done PG, CTE, DTE from EFL University, Hyderabad. He also has TESOL certificate from Trinity College, London. And he has presented widely in many international conferences in Vietnam, Malaysia, Philippines, Cambodia, Egypt, Turkey, among others in Japan, and he has widely published in Indonesia also. He has widely published on language issues, and his current research interests are world Englishes, politics of English in post-colonial contexts, language, literature, interface areas like stylistics, post-colonial literature in English, and with special interest in English from India's Northeast. So I welcome you, sir, to this session.
Thank you so much.
So you must have, participants must have seen the topic of the talk today. He'll be talking on NEP in classroom dynamics. So NEP is already, you are familiar with NEP, but sir will have his own, idea and throw his light. So the floor is passed on to you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Sajidul Islam, my dear friend, and a warm good morning to everyone present. How many participants?
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
How many participants do we have? I think I got a list of around 190. So it's a huge group, I believe, right? 124 plus, I can see. The thing is that it's wonderful to be here in AMU. I have several connections in AMU. Including, one senior professor, and Sajidul, of course, is a dear friend of mine. So when he asked me to give a talk, I instantly said yes. But then, as it happens, the slides I prepared this morning. Right. So what I will do is, let me start sharing the slides, right? I will talk about it's after a long time that I'm using Google Meet for this. So am I clearly audible, first of all? Am I clearly audible to?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Perfectly audible.
Yeah.
Sir, I request you to please use the entire screen option.
Yes. Entire screen option, right?
Yeah. You have selected the tab option. You please select entire screen option.
Okay. So how to go about doing this?
Just stop presenting.
Stop presenting. Well.
And
Yes.
again, present and
stop presenting here, right? Yes. And then
then
going to share.
same.
Entire screen? No, and not entire screen. Because I think this.
Click on this present now option. You'll find 3 options above.
Okay. Just a second. These are the initial hiccups. Don't worry, and we'll have a discussion.
No worries.
Yeah. So this is the window.
Yeah. Click on entire screen option.
Yeah.
and then click on the small screen appears,
Entire.
and then click on share.
Oh. Okay, is it visible anyway? I mean,
Yeah, it's visible fine. It's visible fine.
just a moment. Let me
But
go
if you put it on slideshow, I think.
Just a moment. Yes, I have to put it on slideshow like this,
Now
right?
it's okay. Now perfectly fine.
Perfectly fine, right? Okay, and I'm audible as well.
Yes, audible.
Yes, yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So,
Yes, sir.
thanks to Sajidul and all others, the organizers, for inviting me to be a part of this uh, teacher education program. Let me begin with this. Let me begin. I'm very garrulous by nature. So once I start talking, it goes on and on and on. So I think I have around 45 minutes time from now. And then after that, we will have a discussion, 45 to 50 minutes maybe. Let me see. I will try and complete whatever I want. In the middle, of course, if you want to ask me something, feel free to stop me, to interject, and to only if you have something very substantial to say. So one of the first things is, of course, I know Hindi very well. Urdu is very close to my heart, but I'll be speaking in English. I'm not ashamed to be speaking in English at all. If you're making some connections with certain recent happenings, please do that. But let's go to the NEP document. I mean, the NEP document is a document which talks about English. It's written in English originally. It was written in English and it was published in English and then translated into Hindi and other languages. So look at what this document talks about with specific reference to English. This is in the school education section. I'm coming to the brief overview of the document in the next slide, which you must have already heard people talking about, but then even then, just for maybe a minute or so, I will, give an overview of the document in order that we keep this in mind. So look at what, 4.14, that is chapter 4, section 14 talks about. All efforts will be made in preparing high quality bilingual textbooks and teaching learning materials for science and mathematics so that the students are enabled to think and speak about the two subjects, both in their home language. That's home language is a very problematic term. I maintain that it's a non-technical term, right? Non-linguistic, non-sociolinguistic term, and mother tongue, which is another problematic term. But anyway, I mean, the document uses a slash to talk about home language and mother tongue, and in English. That is so. English is not a language which is not there, not talked about in the document. And then 4.20. Look at what is written here. Now, I have some issues with this. This is not directly linked with the topic, but I thought let me begin with this. In addition to high quality offerings in Indian languages and English, foreign languages such as Korean, Japanese, and then there is a list of foreign languages. So, I have always contested this particular idea of not considering English as an Indian language. Look at what it says. The document says in 4.20, it says quality offerings, high quality offerings in Indian languages in English. Right? So English is neither a foreign language like Korean, Japanese, Thai, French, German, Spanish, etc. In the Indian context, but nor is it an Indian language. I mean, this conceptualization is something that I've been contesting, and there is a possibly a Springer Briggs volume that I'll be authoring It will be coming out later this year, where I'll be dealing with this issue. I consider English to be an Indian language. It has been here for more than 400 years. How much more time do you require to become India's own? Then this question English must be asking. Anyway, let us not bother about this, small political, I call this small political gimmicks of politicians. So, as I said, in an unashamed way, I will of course be using English. I can use Hindi also, Urdu to a certain extent, but maybe sometimes I'll be using Hindi and Urdu while responding to people or while talking about whatever I want to talk about. So I've titled my topic this morning. I did this. Sajidul just had NEP 2020 and classroom dynamics, so I added that portion after the colon, as you can see, a critical analysis. Now I wouldn't be going gaga over the positives of the NEP document. I have attended numerous webinars and seminars on NEP 2020. I've heard most people, just talk about this document as a very sacred document, talking only about the positives, going gaga, as I call it, over the document. So, which of course is a wonderful document. There is no doubt about that. This document has many transformative ideas, but I will try and look at certain ideas to the extent possible critically. The phrase critical thinking, we must remember, occurs 7 times in the document. So taking a cue from this, I would like to put forward my views for your consideration. But before we start talking about this classroom dynamics, I think it is important for us to look at how the NEP 2020 document is organized, with particular reference to classroom dynamics in the context of school education. So this is what the document is. Many people must have already talked about, but just initial remarks from my side. It's a 65-page document with an introduction and 4 parts: school education, higher education, other key areas of focus, and making it happen. So we will be focusing, I gather that this is an education program. Yes, I have another issue with the word training, as it is applied. We know what training means in this particular context, but I believe, the word training has a kind of a coercion, a kind of force associated with. So army personnel, police personnel might get trained in what they do. But with regard to teacher, I would continue using the word education. So, that is one thing. That is just something of a preference. It is not wrong to be using teacher training, perhaps, but I prefer to use teacher education rather than teacher training. So I gathered that this particular program is meant for school teachers. Right, so we'll be focusing on school education, right? Many of the things that I would be talking about, of course, would be applicable across the board, right? But basically, with school education in mind. So this document has 27 chapters in a 65-page. They call these chapters, fine. These are basically sections. But then let us call chapters because the document calls these chapters. So there are 8 chapters which deal with school education. Just a second. Yes, so it is this chapter 4 which specifically deals, I believe, with something that we would be talking about, we'll be dealing with in this particular session. classroom dynamics. It's titled Curriculum and Pedagogy in Schools. And then after the colon, learning should be holistic, integrated, enjoyable, and engaging. Right. So this particular, you know, chapter begins by talking about the restructuring. As we all know, these are the things that we all have, come to know from the document itself. But I'm just referring to this because in the context of this, we'll have this discussion. So the restructuring of the school curriculum and pedagogy in a new 5+3+3+4 design, which is a very transformative idea, which is very interesting idea. So this particular structure has this 4 stages which the document talks about in chapter 4: foundational stage, and preparatory stage, and middle stage, and secondary stage. Right now, let us go through these stages very quickly, because these things are related to classroom dynamics. The kind of classroom dynamics where teachers and students are the main players. So let us go through these sections. Chapter 4, section 2, it deals with what we ought to have in the classroom, in the various stages. So foundational stage, of course, play, activity-based learning, and then preparatory stage, in addition to the play, discovery, and activity-based pedagogical and curricular style of foundational stage, interactive classroom learning. So interaction becomes very important. Now, when we talk about classroom dynamics, I will talk about certain ideas that I have. I'm not going to talk about any techniques in the classroom as such in that way, but I'm just going to broadly talk about certain ideas that I have, and you can add to these ideas with regard to subject specificity, because I gather that you have people from different subject backgrounds, like botany, etc., English. So interactive classroom learning at the preparatory stage, and then at the middle stage, that is from class 6 to class 8, I believe. That's the middle stage. Learning and discussion of the more abstract concepts. And then it talks about experiential learning. This term we will focus upon a bit towards the end. Experiential learning. And then it talks about explorations, very interesting, explorations of relations among subjects, right? So the subject borders are expected to be fluider than we normally think about them, in the way in which we think about them. So this is about the middle stage. And then you have this secondary stage. In the secondary stage, greater critical thinking, right? Greater attention to life aspirations. This critical thinking is very important. Experiential learning, critical thinking, right? And then in section 4.4, the key overall thrust of curriculum and pedagogy reform across all stages will be to move the education system towards real understanding and towards learning how to learn, right? And away from the culture of rote learning. Now, in this particular context, I must say that NEP 2020 has not said anything which is new. This particular thing was also there in the earlier policy documents, 1986, 92. It was there as well. But here, in this particular document, we have this particular thing repeated a number of times. Experiential learning, learning how to learn, right? In order that these learners become lifelong learners, right? They can, in order that they become autonomous learners. So learning how to learn is more important, right? Moving away from this culture of rote learning as is largely present today, as the document says. Then, 4.5, there is one more section which I'll be talking about, and then moving to the main discussion. So curriculum content will be reduced in its subject to its core essentials to make space for critical thinking, again, critical thinking, more holistic, inquiry-based, discovery-based, discussion-based, and analysis-based learning. That is how the document conceptualizes, classroom teaching and learning. So our classroom dynamics that we'll be talking about would depend on these ideas that are there in the document. So problem solving, applications of ideas and problem solving, interactive manner, repeated here again, questionings will be encouraged. The classroom is supposed to be, the classroom sessions are supposed to be, full of fun, creative classrooms, collaborative, exploratory activities for students for deeper and more experiential learning. Experiential learning, critical thinking, these terms are repeated again and again in this document. So now let us move away from this document. Let us keep these things in mind. There is one more thing which is there. That's the last clause, 4.6, that I'll be referring to. In all stages, again, there is a repetition. Experiential learning will be adopted, including hands-on learning, arts integrated and sports integrated education, which the document talks about in a little more detail a little later. And then storytelling-based pedagogy, among others, as standard pedagogy within each subject, right? And the shift that the document anticipates would be towards competency-based learning and education. Now, in the light of these ideas that are there in the document, how do we conceptualize teaching acts inside the classroom? Because we're all teachers, aren't we? So we are supposed to talk about what we are supposed to do in the classroom. How do we conceptualize teaching acts inside the classroom? Obviously, when you think about this, you think about the role of the teacher. What is our role supposed to be? How do teachers think of their teaching? Right. In this context, this morning I was thinking about this. All teachers, in my opinion, should read this particular book, The Call to Teach by David Hansen. It's a 1996 published book, which I believe every teacher, as I said, should read. In this book, what Hansen does is, Hansen characterizes teaching as a vocation. The Latin root of the word it is not in the way in which we talk about vocational education. So in the way in which we talk about vocational education, that basically means hands-on experience with regard to certain domains, right? So it is not in that sense that the word vocation has been used by Hansen. Hansen actually goes to the Latin root, and the Latin root is very important. It's vocare. Vocare in Latin means to call. So, so a vocation, teaching as vocation, would mean that we, the teachers, we have been called to the service of humanity, that kind of a higher end which is associated with teaching, right? So it is not, there are other words which we often use, right? Job and work and career and occupation and profession. So there is no problem in using any of these words, but these words cannot be equated with vocation when it is applied in the context of teaching. So what Hansen does, this I think is very important, because the document doesn't talk about the role of the teacher as such, but from the way in which it talks about the classroom, what should happen inside the classroom. There's experiential learning and critical learning and activity-based learning and so on and so forth. We, the teachers, we need to think about our own role as teachers. We have to think about what teaching is, how we conceptualize teaching. So you can call it a job, but it is not merely a job. A job is, after all, an activity that provides sustenance and survival. I mean, that is also something very important, because at the end of the month, of course, we get a salary, which is very important for us. But it when you call teaching a job, it's not a matter. I hope you've understood that it's not a matter of right and wrong. It's basically a matter of what your focus is. You can call it a job, but if you call it a job, you possibly would end up, suggesting something that you do which is highly repetitive, a kind of tasks over which you don't have any control. Jobs are usually assigned by other people. So you have been assigned certain tasks by the principal, maybe by the authorities, by the administrators, and you don't have that volition. You don't have that, agency that we talk about. So if you consider it as a job to be done somehow, right? Certain 4 or 5 classes that you need to take because they're there in the timetable, then possibly you are thinking about this act of teaching in a manner which is not desirable, right? You don't seem to have that kind of an agency. That is, of course, suggestive of this particular use, is suggestive of that particular kind of thing. You can call it a work. If you call it work, personal autonomy, of course, seems to be there. If you call it work, maybe, but unlike vocation, it need not imply being of service to others necessarily. So you can call it a career. We call it career as a teacher. But then what this word describes is basically a long-term involvement in a particular activity. In this context, the activity of teaching. But it differs from vocation in similar ways that job and work do. That is, it need not provide personal fulfillment, not necessarily a sense of identity, nor public service. Now, if you call it an occupation, so an occupation is an endeavor harbored within a society's economic, social, and political system. But people can have occupations that do not entail a sense of calling. Hanson talked about teaching. Right. So you can also call it a profession. Many of us do that, calling it a profession. This profession, even the word profession, broadens the idea of an occupation by emphasizing the expertise.
Group 2, Saiful Islam sir.
So this is how we multitask actually.
Imran Raees.
We are in a session, and then we are doing other things as well. I know this is often what many of us do, while attending these programs. I think this has been switched off, right? The mic has been switched off. Thank you so much. So as I said, if you use the word profession for teaching, that basically broadens the idea of an occupation, and it emphasizes the expertise and social contribution that people like us in an occupation render to society. However, it still doesn't have that sense of being of service to the community at large that vocation has. The moral dimensions of vocations do not seem to be there in the use of the word profession. So what is the I hope all of us would agree that while none of these uh, words for teaching is wrong, there is nothing wrong or right about these words, but I think vocation is a word which Hansen uses, which many of us would like to use with regard to teaching, right? Especially when you think of the higher ends that are associated with this particular act of teaching. So this leads us to think about the aim of teaching. Um, well, this is not an exact quotation from chapter 4, section 3, but chapter 4, section 3 actually deals with this particular thing. So teaching is any definite. This is not a definition of teaching as such, but this is all definitional endeavors are so very problematic, aren't they? So it is not a definition, but it's just sort of coming to an understanding of what we are basically supposed to do in the context of what the document talks about. Right. So teaching is aimed at creating optimal conditions for desired learning to take place in as short a time as possible. In as short a time as possible is not mentioned in the document. The document just talks about optimal conditions for desired learning. So there is a troublesome correlation, right? So what is that troublesome correlation here? Can anybody just point out? Is there any troublesome correlation here? Teaching is aimed at creating optimal conditions for desired learning. So, is it necessary that teaching will necessarily lead to learning? Right. So, is this correlation without any trouble? Now, if you go to research, if you go to dilations on teaching and learning, then you will come across this particular idea that learning is considered to be a personal construct. So, however much you teach, however much eloquently you teach, your teaching might not lead to learning if the learners are not ready to learn. So, learning, that is why I said that there is a possibility of thinking about this correlation between teaching and learning to be a little problematic. Right. So in this context, of course, I will talk about other things a little later. So the thing is that at best, perhaps, and that is why perhaps in chapter 4, section 3, in this particular section, which is referred to here in this slide, the document very interestingly, possibly very rightly, talks about the creation of optimal conditions for desired learning. So we can only create, we as teachers we cannot ensure that learning will happen necessarily, but we can create conditions for desired learning, right? In order that we can maximize learning opportunities. That we'll talk about that towards the end of the talk, right? So therefore, although we know that this correlation between teaching and learning seems problematic, seems troublesome, we can at best as teachers in the classroom, we can create optimal conditions for desired learning. Desired learning in the manner in which the document talks about, right? So this actually leads us to another question. What then is the role of the teacher? There are two kinds of thoughts that all of you must have surely done your teacher education courses. So there you must have done all these things, right? There are three strands of thought which become very important, right? When you think about our role as teachers in the classroom. So teachers as passive technicians, right? That's basically I will come to that. A technicist view of teaching, teachers as reflective practitioners, and teachers as transformative intellectuals, right? So when we talk about when we talk about the first one, teachers as passive technicians, so this document actually talks about moving away from this notion of teachers as passive technicians, a technicist view of teaching. Now, in this particular view of teaching, the role of the teacher is that of a passive technician, just like apprentices maybe, whose success is measured in terms of how closely teachers adhere to the professional knowledge base, the professional knowledge base having been created by professional experts, theorists, curriculum designers, and so on and so forth. And the success of a teacher who is a passive technician depends on how effectively they transmit that knowledge base to students. So this is a transmission view of teaching, which this document actually argues against. Right now, here what happens is, as you can see, there is a kind of a disempowerment of teachers whose classroom behavior is mostly confined to, covering the syllabus, to channeling, functioning like a conduit, channeling the pieces of information, the knowledge base to the students, rather than focus on the lived experiences of the teachers and the learners, and the students. Right. So this document actually talks about moving away. It doesn't mention all this, but it basically, in the way in which it conceptualizes, classroom dynamics, it actually moves away from this particular view of teachers. So in this context, this particular view of teachers becomes very important. That is, teachers as reflective practitioners. Two books here. One is this Dewey book is a very famous book. It's a 1933 published book, How We Think, where it talks about reflective action, and how reflective action is important in the context of teaching, and so on and so forth. And this Donald Shawn's book, The Reflective Practitioner, this is a 1980s, 90s book, where Shawn actually talks about routine action as different from reflective action. So routine action is, in my opinion, something which the document argues against. Routine action is something that a teacher who is a passive technician is involved in. Routine action is guided primarily by an uncritical belief in tradition. There is no questioning. There is an unfailing obedience to authority. But reflective action is prompted by a conscious and cautious consideration of any belief or practice in the light of the grounds that support it and the further consequences to which it leads. So it's basically a very context sensitive action grounded in intellectual thought, right? Reflective teaching is supposed to be a very holistic kind of an approach, which emphasizes creativity, artistry, and context sensitivity. The context sensitivity is something which is very important, and that is the reason why you can just suggest macro strategies maybe, but you cannot have a one size fits all kind of a thing. The next is, of course, teachers as transformative intellectuals. Right now, this is basically this Freirean framework. So teachers as transformative intellectuals are supposed to bring to the classroom issues, cultural issues, social and political issues concerning the nation, concerning the context in which the teachers and the students function, right, and are supposed to deal with these issues, right, through discussions, through analysis. Right, these are two very important books. This is often referred to Pedagogy of the Oppressed by Paulo Freire, 1970s work, and this book, Pedagogy of the Heart, was published posthumously in the 1990s. Right, in both these books, especially the first one, he argues against this transmission mode of teaching. The teacher as a sage on the stage. Someone like Atlas bearing the burden of the whole universe, bearing the burden of the whole class, while the students are on the other side. So, in the context of this discussion of teachers as reflective practitioners or transformative intellectuals, I think at the school level, what becomes important are certain macro strategies. I'll be talking about these two macro strategies, which, in my opinion, are very important. How much time do I have? Can I go on for another, say, 10, 15 minutes? Then we can have a discussion.
Yes, sir, sure.
Yeah. So just a minute. Yeah. So these two macro strategies. Now you can have micro strategies in the classroom in accordance with the subjects that you teach, maybe. But this, I believe that these two there are many others, but these two macro strategies in the context of classroom dynamics that we are thinking about, the classroom dynamics where there would be less teacher talk time, there would be more student talk time, there would be more discussions, there would be more analysis, there would be more involvement on the part of the learner. So I think these two macro strategies are very important to keep in mind. These macro strategies could have several micro strategies through which you could realize these macro strategies. One is maximizing learning opportunities, which the document 4.3, as I mentioned earlier, talks about, right? So how to go about doing this. And the second one is activating intuitive heuristics. I will come to this. I'm prompted to talk about language learning and teaching because although I'm involved in teaching literature as well, my department is a literature-focused department, but language teaching has always been first love that I cannot forget. So, I'm prompted to give certain examples, but I wouldn't do that. I'll just be talking about things in general. So maximizing learning opportunities and activating intuitive heuristics. I'm coming to the second one after some time. So what is this maximizing learning opportunities? There are three things which are involved here when we think about the maximizing learning opportunities. One is, there are three things, as I said, but there could be more, but I have thought about these three things. One is this issue of the text, what to do with the text. The text is a very important document, right? Because the text has to be followed. The text has been designed in a manner in which it needs to be followed in the classroom. There's no doubt about that. But in the way in which we think about maximizing learning opportunities, the text, while it continues to be important, could be a kind of a springboard to launch the interactive process in the classroom. That is what we are supposed to do, perhaps. I mean, I would like to have your opinion with regard to this. So the text could function, while it continues to be important, but it could function like a springboard to launch the interactive process in the classroom, where we can go much beyond the text and include many other issues which maybe the text is suggestive of, but doesn't deal with directly. So in that sense, if you with what I'm saying, then textbooks should function as source books rather than course books, right? This is so you can go well beyond the text, especially in the higher classes, especially say in the secondary stage from class 9 to class 10. We're supposed to do that. The text should be a springboard, a kind of a source book, which could, rather than a course book, rather than merely be a course book, I would put it that way, which could lead us to think of many other cognate issues. Right. So that is one thing. The issue of text. So you have to go beyond the text and try and using various micro strategies to maximize these learning opportunities. The second is something that we say we do, but I do this in my classroom. I, of course, teach at the master's level and the PhD level, coursework level. So it is usually very discussion based, right? Those days of lecturing people at this level, those days are really passe. Sometimes you need to dilate upon things in detail, but is usually a discussion based method that we follow in our master's classroom. That is, I follow in my classroom, right? So the second thing, as I said, is listening. If you're thinking about maximizing learning opportunities, then you have to listen to the learner's voice, because unless you listen to the learner's voice, that learner involvement will not happen. There's no gainsaying that this won't happen. This is basically a kind of a given, right? So listening to the learner's voice. Now, if you listen to the learner's voice, then the learner obviously will not, very many teachers do that. They might get hold of a microphone and talk about the advantages of listening to the learner's voice. But my experience has been that when it comes to actual teaching in the classroom, or conceptualizing that teaching act in the classroom, this listening to the learner's voice doesn't happen in the manner in which it is supposed to happen. So once you do that, then the learner, as I said, gets involved, and the learners start believing that they're capable of not only contributing to the classroom discourse, right, but also navigating the classroom discourse in a direction which was perhaps not anticipated by the teacher, right? So obviously, there is this sense of autonomy that the learners experience, that sense of power, right, moving away from the dominance of the teacher in the classroom context. So I think when you're thinking about maximizing learning opportunities, listening to the learner's voice becomes very important. And then another thing, there are many things that are now cropping up in my mind, but I will restrict myself to these things only. It's already 10:50, so a few more minutes, please. Right? So teacher questioning. So what are the kinds of questionings? This is based on a session that I had last year. That was for teachers of higher education in my university. We had a hybrid MMTTC 6-day program on NEP 2020 in classroom dynamics, from which my friend Sajidul actually got this idea, and he asked me to talk about this. So teacher questioning. What kind of questioning are we involved in as teachers? Choice questions. Now, what are these? These choice questions are questions that call upon the learners to agree or disagree with the teacher's statement, and choose usually a yes or a no. um, as a response. So choice question. So you have a choice of yes or no. It's that kind of question, very basic. This I think most of us are involved in. Product questions. Product questions are questions that ask the learners to provide a factual response, such as, the name of something, or, certain factual details. These are also things that all of us must be involved in as teachers. But the next two kinds of questions are very important for, making interactions happen in the classroom. Otherwise, interactions will not happen. The document talks about activity-based learning and interaction-based learning and so on and so forth. But these interactions will not happen if we don't involve ourselves in asking process questions and matter process questions. So what are process questions? Process questions are questions that ask for learners' opinions and interpretations. The opinions and interpretations are very important. Learners also get involved if you ask learners' opinions, rather than the habit that most of us still have, give it all away, give our opinions first, and then expect learners to agree. Although we keep on saying that we welcome any disagreement, this giving it all away in the classroom without letting any interaction happen is something that we should reconsider. Right, we have been talking about it for a long time, but teachers usually have this tendency, this proclivity of giving it all away once they enter the classroom. So process questions and matter process questions. Matter process questions are questions that ask the learners to formulate the grounds for their reasoning, or to produce the rule or procedure by which they arrived at or the way they remembered the answers that they gave. So meta process questions are also very process questions and meta process questions, along with the very basic choice and product questions. These become very important in this attempt, I believe, at maximizing learning opportunities. Another thing which is very important is activating intuitive heuristics. Now, what is this heuristics? I'm sure many of you must be having this particular question in your minds, with regard to heuristics. So this heuristics basically refers to the process of self-discovery. The discovery approach that the document talks about is basically related to the heuristics. So as I said, heuristics basically refers to the process of self-discovery on the part of the learner. Right. So while applying to, say, language teaching and language learning, there's a wonderful book which I read many years back. It's by Kumar Vaduvelu. It's titled Beyond Methods, Macro Strategies for Language Learning, from where I got this idea. So when it's applied to language learning and teaching, it means that an important task facing the language teacher is to create a rich linguistic environment in the classroom, so that the learners can activate their intuitive heuristics and discover the linguistic system by themselves. Right. In this context, we talk about, now this can be applied to the other subjects as well, to botany or zoology or such or social sciences. But in this context, especially in the higher classes, in the secondary stage, but also in the middle stage, I believe, right? Consciousness raising, right? Not giving it all away, but giving a lot of inputs in order that the consciousness of the learners are raised and they are able to notice the gap, right? And then try and come to inferences. So the role of the teacher in this kind of a classroom is not that of the sage on the stage, as we keep on saying. This metaphor is very important. It's not that of the sage on the stage, but it's that of guide by the side, right? Leading the students, along that path of knowledge, accepting the fact that the students, the learners are also, co-constructors of knowledge. Right now, to end, I've just focus on this. What is this? Can anybody just respond to this while I take a sip of water?
Sir, excuse me. So this is learning by doing.
Ah,
Students
yes,
learn by doing some activity by
yes.
themselves.
Okay, so is it only that? It's very interesting. Is it only that? In one of my presentations, that
So
was
going beyond the text and learning examples from real life.
okay. So how do you go? But I like this
Uh,
kind of discussion.
can I give an example of my own
Please,
class?
please go ahead.
There is a lesson in class 12, Deep Water, written by William Douglas, where
Yes.
what we see is a child who from the beginning of his from very childhood he wanted to learn swimming, but neither of the parents, no mother or father, they did not encourage. Then when he grew a little more up, he tried on his own. Then there's a big boy of 18, he throws him into water, then he is altogether discouraged. The second part of the chapter focuses on how he learns it in spite of all these failures. Now there is a whole lot to learn from this. An individual's problems, parenting, the role of
Okay.
society,
Yeah.
then the uh, uh, how to learn, how to overcome feeling of fear, which is
Yeah.
something timeless. So we can go into each topic bit by bit and ask
Yeah. So,
their
but then,
experiences and
yeah,
teach them.
let us cross talk. No problem with that. But how is that learning by doing? As someone has said, how is that
Learning by
learning? These are
So,
all ideas that are embedded. It's a very interesting example that you have cited. Thanks for that. But how is that exactly learning by doing? This is just getting these ideas, which are discussing these ideas, which also is something which is very important, discussion of the ideas. But how is that learning by doing? Right.
Sir,
holding a group
sir,
discussion.
sir, when
Yeah.
learners
Let me let
practically
me just
apply.
yeah.
So learners practically apply any concept, and
Yes.
then they explore that thing in their own way. And every learner must be having their different concept and thought process. So
Yeah.
according to that, they learn in a different manner. To any concept, they learn in a different manner.
Yes, thank you for saying that. That was a
so
nice way of. Yes,
I
please
would
go
like,
ahead.
I would also like to say, so
Please,
when classroom teaching learning is connected with the real life experience,
yeah,
then experiential learning takes place.
yeah. So
Whatever the
if
person is learning
just
from this.
if classroom learning is related to real life experiences, that
Yes,
is called experiential learning. Is that enough?
yes, then
A lot of people. Let me. No one is wrong, right? But what I would say is that when you are thinking about experiential learning, the document, NEP document, repeatedly, talks about. But obviously, because it's a 65-page document, it could not have expatiated upon what this experiential learning is. The document, therefore, is silent on how this experiential learning would happen. Right. So experiential learning, in the way in which I think about it, in which people have already. I have posted this thing. I have this picture of a model which was proposed by Cobb in 1984. Very famous, model called the Cobb learning model of experiential learning. So experiential learning is not a standalone kind of an experience as many people actually think it to be. It's not just connecting what you have in the syllabus, a chapter, with certain real life experiences. It's not merely that. It's not merely taking people to outside, taking people outside the classroom to a certain place, right? Which then becomes a standalone kind of an experience. So experiential learning is not exactly that. That could be the first stage. There are 4 stages according to this model. So when the document talks about experiential learning, it basically, maybe it doesn't talk about this in detail, but obviously it has this thing in mind, right? So it begins with, there is a cycle which is there. And according to this model, there are 4 steps which are there. So this concrete experience is very important, right? You experience that, that thing in reality, that concrete experience, right? That hands-on experience.
So can holding a very smart group discussion on the related topics could be also experiential learning?
In a way, it could be, but it's a concrete kind of an experience. Why not? It's how you feel. Look at this module. Think about your own discipline, your own subject, and think about how this could be applied to your own context. Then experiential learning doesn't end with that concrete experience. Reflection is something which is very important. Reflective observation, watching, not only feeling, not only that experience, that real life experience, which becomes very important, but it's observation, it's reflection, it's watching, right? And then there is this third stage which is talked about in this model, which is abstract conceptualization. Abstract conceptualization is not just watching, not just observing or reflecting. It's basically thinking deeper, conceptualizing, right? Looking at the idea behind this particular phenomenon. If you are thinking about one phenomenon, right, in a physics class, thinking about that phenomenon, conceptualizing. And then there's a fourth stage, which is doing. So it's feeling, watching, thinking, doing, right? Doing is this active experimentation, applying the ideas, up to stage 3 to maybe something else, and finding out whether this holds good. Experimentation, active experimentation, right? So experiential learning, when we talk about, we need to understand that this is not just a standalone kind of an experience of taking people outside the classroom maybe and making them experience something and then bring them back to the classroom, and that's the end of it, right? It's this process that one has to go through, right? So I'd like to conclude here. If you have any questions, I mean, this is something which is statutory. I mean, we do at the end of all talks. You can reach out to me. This is my email address, and this is my mobile number. And now I think, Sajidul, we can go for a discussion, right? Or this discussion need not be in the sense of only questions. This discussion, obviously, because it's a discussion, it could be your own ideas with whatever I said, and you can add to what I said. I'll be very happy if you add to what I said. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for listening to
Thank you, sir.
whatever I had to say. Thank you.
Sir, my
Yes.
name is Hina. Good
Yeah.
morning, sir. Can I?
Please also introduce yourself. Yeah.
Yes, sir. I'm Hina from AMU ABK, High School Girls.
Yeah.
Sir, first of all, I would like to express my thanks for such an enlightening session, and your insights on NEP 2020 have truly given us a clear roadmap for implementation. Sir, I want to I'm not asking you any question. I just want your opinion. Like
Yeah.
after NEP 2020, we all are headed towards executing it, and somehow we are into the process. It is not we have not achieved completely, but into the process.
Yeah.
So I'm asking, like, what will be the biggest practical challenge that teachers might face while implementing NEP 2020 at the classroom level? Like we are dealing with the students up to class 12th, Mostly we are the teachers up to class 10. And while carrying out any such process, what type of support we can expect, or as a teacher we can get from the school administration during this transition?
Well,
So
there are lots of principals in this group as well, I believe. So
yes, sir.
the principals will be in a better position to let us know about support from the school authorities, right? So I don't think I'm
Yes.
the right person to talk about that. I would love to listen from principals. But if you think about, I'm thinking on my feet. Right? So I believe that all these things that we talk about, certain ideas that I discussed, the classroom dynamic, activating inclusive usage skills, maximizing learning opportunities, etc.,
Yes,
that
sir.
we talked about, seem to be emanating from a very ideal kind of a conceptualization of a classroom. Right. But
Okay, sir.
the practicality could be a little different and difficult in the context of say the way in which the examinations are conducted. I believe that the examinations are still ones which entail kind of a strict focus on the textbooks. So, however much you talk about the textbooks as source books rather than course books, the textbooks continue to be very sacred documents because questions are asked strictly from the textbooks, right? The examination pattern is still, in many ways, such. You think about it because I don't teach at the school level, but I believe that my children do. My daughter does. She is in class 6. So I believe that the questions which are asked are basically questions which can be answered if one has committed, the answers to memory. During our times when I was in school, I mean, this particular phrase was very popular. Commit something to memory. I think this is why the document still talks about that it's basically rote learning, which is still the order of the day. So the challenge, I believe, one of the challenges you can add to, any of you can add to many of the things that you have in mind, is that the syllabus design, the teaching learning act. I'm thinking of these two together: the act of teaching, the act of learning inside the classroom, and the examination system. They all have to be in sync, right? Only then these ideas will really have meaning, in my opinion, right? Do I make sense?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, although
Yes,
the
sir.
lots of principles here, I'm interested in
I got your point.
getting to know from you, principles. What ideas do you have in the context of how teaching learning is organized? Is it basically this completing the syllabus, which continues to be important, I must say. After all, this is a kind of a structured curriculum that we still have, right? So completing the
Yes,
syllabus
sir.
is very important. But should we still relegate our teaching learning acts to this? So,
Yes, sir.
if there is something innovative that any principal does or any teacher,
Ma'am, please mute your mic.
um, you might please let us know if you do it differently in your school.
Yes, sir. Definitely. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. So, is there any other comment or
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
good
Good
morning,
morning,
sir.
sir. Dr.
morning?
Good
Farhat
morning,
Parveen
sir.
from
Farhat
ABP
This
Parveen.
is
Girls.
Uma Mukhtar. This is Uma Mukhtar from AMU Girls School. I want to ask that how does NEP 2020 promote inclusivity in the classroom?
Wow, that's something which is very, very interesting. Inclusivity is something that has been dealt with by the document in more ways than one. For instance, it talks about the different kinds of learners, right? It talks about learners who are, from the point of view of gender, different, from the point of view of ability, within inverted quotes, different. So it talks about how the teaching act inside the classroom has to be inclusive. But many questions remain, because the details, it all depends on how teachers actually conceptualize their teaching
Yes.
acts, right? So
Yes.
equity and inclusion, two terms in the document to which we are giving lip service. I had a very critical take on this, in one of my presentations long time back. I believe it is not very easy to talk about inclusion in the classroom. The document can talk about this.
Right, sir.
It's very ideal kind of a thing, but look at the kind of society that we live in. I mean, I'm being absolutely candid about this. I'm saying only this much that I can say in public. We are divided. We are a divided society, right? A name triggers various kinds of emotions in us nowadays. Let us be honest.
Yes, sir.
Name of a language gets a reaction from very powerful politicians, right? It's that kind of a society where we talk about how people will feel ashamed if they use a particular kind of a language. I mean, this is the kind of society that we are in. Let us face the facts. In this context, when we're talking about inclusion, when you're talking about equity, we have to be very cautious. I believe we have to devise mechanisms whereby we might not wish to give only lip service to these ideas.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Anything else you'd like to add? Please do that.
Yes, Dr. Farad Parveen from AMU ABK High School Girls.
Yes, please.
So thank you very much for sharing your expertise. And the lecture was really very informative. And the point that I liked most was maximizing learning opportunities. And thank you, Huma ma'am, for asking this question, because this was the question that I wanted sir's opinion
Thank you.
also.
Thank you, Farad
And
ma'am.
in continuation to this discussion, I would like to add something. Like there are exercises in art. I teach English in class 9 and 10, and the books prescribed over there are basically NCERT books. And when we talk about what to do with the text, there is a lot that we can do with the text apart from teaching or discussing the question answers. And the chapter is also designed in the way, like the chapter begins with a term before you read. So in here we can involve the students in different type of the discussions. Like there is a chapter Nelson Mandela Long Walk to Freedom, and there the term apartheid was discussed in the class. Though it was an English class, but the students had a discussion on this term apartheid because they had studied it in civics also. And there are so many exercises like speaking. In groups discuss the issues, and issues like causes of poverty, discrimination based on gender, all these things. Such type of the exercises, they invite the student to have their opinions on that particular topic. Rather that we give the information regarding all these things, causes of poverty वगैरह वगैरह, टीचर इससे पहले कि टीचर कुछ बताए उनको, टीचर को एक अपॉर्चुनिटी देनी चाहिए कि बच्चा क्या सोचता है इन टॉपिक्स के बारे में. So, sir, the thing that you told in your lecture, ki maximizing learning opportunities, I understood as an English teacher is that we have to give chance to the students to talk about such issues and things that are already mentioned in the textbook. These are not the things that we are producing ourselves. कि teacher को कुछ मेहनत खुद करना पड़ रहा है. Already book के अंदर ये exercises मौजूद हैं. So, sir, thank you very much for sharing your opinions regarding this.
Thank you,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Thank you, Huma ma'am, again.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, ma'am. I'm still thinking about this. I'm just looking up the document on my laptop, and I'm thinking about this inclusion and equity and so on and so forth. As I said, sometimes I wonder whether we are giving only lip service to these ideas. Now, this document, very interestingly, I'm just looking up the document. It talks about closing the existing small schools, if you remember. All of you might have gone through the document on numerous occasions. Now, this talks about closing the existing small schools and merging the small schools with bigger ones. It also
Yes,
talks
sir.
about,
Yes, sir. Recently, there is
so
a
in
news.
that sense, when we on the one hand we are talking about inclusion, on the one hand we are talking about equity, but on the other hand we are talking about closing the existing small schools. So this closing the small existing schools could further vulnerabilize marginalized children or children belonging to marginalized communities, in my opinion. So that's something which this is also, if you look at it from a theoretical perspective, the bigger public schools eating the smaller, devouring the smaller ones, right? So the marginalized people, the children belonging to the marginalized communities may be further marginalized. I mean, that possibility is there, in my opinion. So there are certain things. The document also needs to be critiqued, in my opinion. Now, in another presentation, I'm thinking on my feet and thinking of what I've been doing with this document, the talks that I've delivered, and so on and so forth. I'm very critical of at least one thing in the document, that is, the language policy. I mean, the document talks about mother tongue, which is a very problematic notion. It will take 2 hours for me to talk about the whole thing. So I will not go into this, but the notion of the mother tongue is very problematic, in my opinion. What is my mother tongue, for instance? My parents used Bangla at home. I grew up I was born in Guwahati. I grew up in an Assamese neighborhood. So even Assamese is my mother tongue, because I learned both the languages together. Right? Because the neighborhood was Assamese. I went to one of the best schools in Guwahati, where Hindi is what I learned, because most of my um, batchmates were Hindi speaking, and the school was an English medium school, so I learned English at school. So a quintessential multilingual, in the context of a quintessential, and later I learned Marathi, Nepali, right? French, of course. That's after that was a part of a professional endeavor, I would say. But in the context of a quintessential multilingual, this notion of mother tongue becomes very problematic, and Sanskrit as well, Urdu, Hindi, Sanskrit. I had my education in English, right? So one of the best schools in Guwahati, Nichols. Now, of course, you have a plethora of schools. Am I talking too much?
No,
Or
sir. No, sir. Please.
No,
No,
sir.
please
It's
No,
all
sir.
relevant. It's
It's
all
please
wonderful
relevant.
to
continue, sir.
listen.
yeah, I have this
No,
bad
sir. It's wonderful to listen to you.
Thank you so much. So,
Yeah, yeah.
so I tell you something. I went to a Baptist school, Nichols English School. Now, of course, as I said, you have a plethora of schools in Guwahati. It's a metropolis. But at that point in time, we had three good schools, if I may call them good, mine and two others. So it was a Baptist school. They never attempted to make me a Christian, right? So English education has not taken away my mother tongues, Bengali or Assamese. I read in Bangla, write in Bangla, can read Assamese, can write in Assamese, can read Hindi. Hindi is a language which I learned at school. So what I'm saying is, this home language, regional language. What are these? What is the regional language in Southern Assam? Southern Assam, where I'm based, the majority of the people speak Bangla. So is this the regional language then? So if this is the regional, what about the Meitei speaking people, the Manipuri? We have a sizable Manipuri speaking people here. What will happen to them if the education is in the regional language as the document talks about. So of course one thing must be said, the document actually uses a lot of slashes, home language, regional language, mother tongue, and so on and so forth, confusing people. So I'm very critical of the document with regard to that. I believe that one could use any language in the classroom, including English, right? It's a bilingual, trilingual, multilingual classroom that we are in. So no language should be barred from the classroom. That is my way of looking at it, right? Yeah,
Absolutely right, sir.
your opinions, please. So what
Yes, sir, definitely, yes,
I'm an
sir.
example. I'm an example of how English education has not taken away the mother tongue from you. If
Yes, sir, definitely.
if any mother tongue can be taken away from you, then that is not
So,
a mother tongue at all.
so
Can
when Germans, when when Germans had taken over certain area of France and they forced the French people to learn German language, that time there was a shock, major blow to lose their mother tongue. But India is a country where, with multilingual country where things are very different.
yes,
From
but
mother,
with regard to what is going on across India, North India is much better, I would say, but in different other parts of India, these language wars are becoming all too intense, in my opinion. Right? And politicians should not be contributing to this language war. I think, I'm thinking, I think we should be taking a cohabitationist approach. A cohabitationist approach with regard to everything. Instead of otherizing people, cohabitationist approach. Why can't different languages be together? So that is my way of looking at things.
thank you, sir.
Any other opinion?
Good morning, sir. I am Bushra Kayas from AMU Girls School. So it was wonderful to hear you related to NEP 2020. But sir, I don't have any question. I just want to know that is NEP 2020 making students relax? It is totally student-centered education. Like we used to have boards once only. Now the boards have started twice. 2 times the boards will be held. The student has full opportunity to appear in both the boards and the best of the marks will be counted. So is it making students more relaxed and the teachers are overburdened?
Yeah. So student-centered
Very good question.
pedagogy is a very interesting question, but student-centered pedagogy doesn't mean that. Doesn't mean that students are given relaxation. Student-centered pedagogy basically means that the classrooms are not teacher-fronted. So normally in a traditional kind of a classroom, what we have is we have a very dominant teacher who does everything. The teacher is like, if you remember this Greek titan Atlas, bearing the burden of the whole earth on his shoulders. So a teacher-fronted classroom is one where the teacher does everything. The teacher talks all the time. The teacher organizes all the teaching learning activities. The teacher asks questions. The teacher admonishes the students, and the students are basically, on the other side, seeming like passive recipients of the knowledge shared by the teacher. So a student-centered classroom is exactly the opposite of this kind of a classroom. That is what student-centeredness means. That the students also have some authority. It is the teacher who is the guide by the side, as I said earlier, rather than being a sage on the stage. These metaphors are very important. And knowledge is basically not conceived of as a heap on the top of which someone can sit. Knowledge is rather, co-constructed by the teacher and the students, right? As they approach, as they go along that path of knowledge. So that is how, this is an ideal kind of a thing, one might say. but this is how it is conceptualized. I agree with the fact that there are fewer exams now, as ma'am has pointed out. But then this is also something which is required in such certain ways, because but it is not happening in higher education. In the CBCS system, I tell you, I was thinking about this a few days back. On earlier occasions, we used to have a lot of time for discussions in the classrooms. Now in the CBCS system, what you have this monthly tests and this fortnightly tests, sessional tests, and you have this end semester summative tests, and it is testing all that. It has become more mechanical. This is my way of looking at this. I believe that, in fact, higher education, and also school education to a certain extent, I believe there are lots of tests which are there. Maybe the board exams have become fewer. This is what you mean, perhaps. But there are lots of tests, right? So learning from testing, learning by testing, of course, there is a kind of, this is known as washback. Testing actually contributes to learning in certain ways. But then learning by testing is not a very good thing. So it is because of this. One of the reasons might be this, that there are fewer board exams. But what is your experience of the number of tests that you have otherwise at school? This fortnightly, do you have this fortnightly tests, unit tests?
Yes, sir. We have unit test. We have periodic test for children up to 10th, and the best of the two, average of the best of the two is taken. And after the boards and annual examination, test of opportunity for retest is also there.
Yeah. So, higher education in our university, the master's level, we have a similar kind of a thing. You wouldn't believe.
Yes, sir.
Right. So maybe the board exam, the number of board exams has come down, but then the number of tests, in my opinion, I'm talking with particular regard to higher education, that has increased. Right, which is not something which is very good in my opinion. Right.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah, Anwar, thank you so much for your any other opinion? If you'd like to share something. (156 people, 156 plus people. If you would like to, please feel free to share whatever, because I would like to know from you. It doesn't happen always that I get to meet school teachers this way. So I'd be very happy to know from you, from your experience. Okay, lots of thumbs ups and.
Sir, Assalamu alaikum.
Huh.
Sir, this is Tanveen Ashraf from AMU City Girls High School.
Yeah.
Sir, I want to know you, sir, twice board system. Is it beneficial for the student in future? Sir, I think this loses the memory system of the students, I think so. Sir, what do you think, sir? Sir, because after the corona period, you observe that the students, they lose their habit of learning. Sir, I think this is sir, beneficial for the students, sir.
Yeah, the very interesting way in which you put it. Thank you so much. So I think this is this two board exams that you are talking about. This is a way of lessening the burden of exams in certain ways, right? Where you need to focus on fewer things at one point in time. So this is not supposed to be something which is bad, right? More so in the context of what we are expected to do in the classroom, maximizing learning opportunities and activating intuitive heuristics amongst other things. So in the context of this, I think if you're focusing on smaller chunks at a particular point in time, right? Unlike the way in which we used to appear, I'm talking about the late 1980s, early 1990s. Our class 10 exams, my goodness me, there were so many papers, so many courses.
Yes, sir.
Higher secondary, I still remember so many courses. Now these people, they do nothing in comparison. This is my feeling as well. But I think in a way this is good from the point of view of exams, right? From the point of
Yes,
view
yes,
of what you intend to test, right? If
yes,
you
sir.
have 12 things to test at any given point in time, the focus actually shifts from skill sets to memory, right?
Yes,
So
sir.
yeah, so if as she Termina, right? Termina Ashraf.
Yes, sir. Tahmina. Yes, sir.
Yes. So if your students, you find to be having a kind of a memory which is on a decreasing climb, then you should ask them to eat well, to eat a lot of nuts, right? Because memory is a kind of.
Yes, sir.
But I think this idea is basically because of lessening the burden of the students with regard to exams,
Yes,
right?
sir. Yes.
Focusing on the skill sets, development of the skill sets rather than memory. Okay,
Yes, sir.
memory continues to be very important. Yes,
Thank you so
Sajidul.
much, sir.
Thank you. Thank
Thank
you,
you so
sir.
much.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much for this interactive and informative session. And I hope the participants have been benefited. As I can see from their enthusiasm, the questions that they asked. Today is the last day of our session. We have one more session starting at 12.
Okay, yeah.
Hmm.
So thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. It was wonderful, talking about the things that I did and interacting with the teachers. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you, sir, for a
you.
wonderful session.
Thank you.
It would be a good
Thank you, sir.
for you. I hope it would go on listen to you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
sir.
sir.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much. So I'm taking
Thank
leave
you
of.
so much, sir. Thank you so much.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello.